got a decent number of days lately. I don't know how long you guys are.
I got a packet from the yeah.
Good afternoon. We expect a few more people to join us, but we all know it's promotional time right now, so we want to get started so we can give people enough time to communicate everything they want to communicate here today. I'm Councilmember Isaiah Thomas. I'm a council member at large here in the city of Philadelphia, and I'm proud to stand here today to talk about a bill that will be introduced in City Council tomorrow that will change how we implement the motor vehicle code in the city of Philadelphia. I'm going to talk in depth about the bill a little bit later, but I want to start by framing the conversation. We all know what happened earlier this week, and before we get into that, I want to offer my condolences to the Wallace family, to the members of that community, and to everybody who had to experience that trauma. We failed you. We failed that community. We failed that family. And we have to put ourselves in a position where we will not continue to fail Philadelphians when they're asking their government to respond to a crisis. Unfortunately for us in Philadelphia, this is not the first time that we have failed a young black man when they've interacted with police. I stood in front of this very statue a few months ago with the Justice for David Jones Coalition, as citizens of Philadelphia continue to demand justice for David Jones. When I ran for city council in 2015, we talked about the shooting of Brandon Tate Brown, and we asked for justice for Brandon Tate Brown. Since I've been in council, there have been a number of issues that have come across my plate related to what we witnessed earlier this week. And today, our hope is to first of all address the elephant in the room, which is how communities of color are policed, but more importantly, to put us in a position where we continue to explore and implement solutions to how we address this issue of policing in communities of color. So we're here today because there's a bill that will be introduced in City Council tomorrow that will, if implemented, and implemented the right way, police officers in Philadelphia will no longer be responsible for minor traffic violations. After the incident Monday, there have been a number of conversations that started long before Monday as it relates to who responds to 911 calls and what they're capable of. Long before Monday, there was conversation around, I'm sorry, it's a lot. I'm gonna stop right there. With that being said, let me just pass it to one of our partners in this entire process. And this is somebody who, their office has been a huge resource. They've been somebody that we can rely on as it relates to facts and data. I'm pretty sure you can tell this is an issue that I'm very passionate about, and I'll talk about a little bit later. But I want to take a moment to bring up somebody who's my personal friend, somebody who lives in my community, somebody who I know cares about not just this issue, but issues around the quality of life for all Philadelphians. And so I want to take a moment to acknowledge and bring up our Chief Public Defender, Karen Bradford Gray.
Thank you so much, Councilman Thomas. And I want to say this. I thank you so much for your braveness and your courage to face this issue head on. I also want to thank the members of the Defender Association, the Police Accountability Unit, for making sure that we are aware of what's going on in our city as it relates to policing. This bill really represents decriminalizing minor traffic violations, and that is necessary. We cannot ask the police to police themselves when it comes to racism in our cities. We know that. We have asked, we have marched, we have cried, we have done everything we can to change the power dynamic of how communities of color have been policed. The things that we have seen in policing would shock anyone's conscience, but would validate those in the Black and brown communities who understand what they feel, but it's often hard to conceptualize and often hard to find the words to talk about and express it. But let me show you this. We talk about policing helps us to achieve public safety. Well, our office has examined over 300,000 motor vehicle stops. With the lens towards public safety, what are we doing with those resources and time? What return on investment has it given us? Let me give you a few stats for you to understand why this bill is so necessary to make sure that we are policing communities of color with the eye towards public safety. Of over 300,000 motor vehicle stops, 72% of those were for Black drivers. While 43% of Philadelphia's population is Black, 72% of those stops are for Black drivers. When you look at the stops and frisks and searches of those drivers, which were 2 times more than that of white drivers, who only represented a little over 7% of the stops. We say that again. White drivers represented a little over 7% of the stops. When things were found, anything illegal was found on those Black drivers who represent 70% of those stops, we saw less than 1/4% of return on our investment. 0.17% of the time, illegal items were found on that of Black drivers. Juxtapose that to those of white drivers, who are 35% more likely to have illegal items found on them. But we never saw an uptick in the stopping of white drivers for certain reasons. Why, you ask? Because of racial profiling. That's what this represents. What we have been seeing in our city is not a good tool for public safety, but it has sought to agitate the Black community to the point where they do not want to work with police officers to solve crime in their neighborhoods because they've been the target of police intrusion in their lives. This bill will help delineate that in some ways. I hope there's going to be more to come, but I can't tell you how much I thank Councilman Thomas, the rest of his colleagues, Councilwoman Brooks, anyone who sponsored this bill and anyone who's co-signed on this bill, because they get it. And they are answering the call that many citizens are out here marching for and many citizens are hurting for, and that is equality and fairness. Fundamentally, Black communities want public safety. We don't want racial profiling. And if we're going to end that practice, we know we can't rely on the police. We have to legislate it. So thank you so much, Councilman Thomas, for giving me an opportunity to speak. And I really, really do. I can't wait to see where this bill goes.
Thank you, Chief Public Defender Graham. Again, our office has been a phenomenal resource as it relates to collecting data. Our office has been a phenomenal resource as it relates to collecting data, stats, and facts, as in, specifically around stops in the city of Philadelphia. And so with that being said, this bill, which will be introduced in council tomorrow, has a number of different co-sponsors. Councilmember Jamie Blackwell, Councilmember Kendra Brooks, who's here today, Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson, Councilmember Curtis Jones, Councilmember Maria Keone Sanchez, Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson, Councilmember Bobby Heenan, Councilmember Helen Gim, and Councilmember Jamie Gautier. So I thank all my colleagues for their support and their co-sponsorship as it relates to this particular legislation. But I want to take a moment to call up my good friend, my sister, and somebody who I know is about this work and is about this movement, Councilmember Kendra Brooks.
I had to prepare remarks because I'm not okay. I had posted yesterday that I'm not okay. And what I mean by saying I'm not okay, and someone asked me, what do I need to be okay? And I said, I need justice for mother's son. So when we talk about equality, when we talk about rights for African Americans in this city, when we talk about doing the right thing, it's important as a legislator now that we put out policies that are protecting our folks, protecting young people, protecting folks for driving while Black. So I'm here today as a proud co-sponsor of this legislation to support my colleague, Councilmember Thomas's bill, Reimagine Driving Safety. This bill is a concrete step towards decreasing incidents of police harassment and violence toward the Black community. By limiting motor vehicle stops to serious violations, this bill will lessen the frequency of negative police interactions. At a time when our city is reeling from the devastating killing of one of our community members, we must act to swiftly ensure that an interaction like this will never occur again. About 90% of code violations are for trivial matters that have nothing to do with public safety, such as tinted windows or missing taillight. We need to improve police-community relations, and at a time of economic crisis, ensure that we are not wasting a single taxpayer money on this matter. We need to stop funding the harassment of our communities, instead fund opportunities for them. The motor code violations contribute to the deep mistrust between police and the communities they police, especially Black community. Driving stops make Black and brown drivers feel harassed and surveilled. Despite the fact that minor code violations are given out very frequently, they do nothing to enhance public safety. Instead, they criminalize and disproportionately penalize low-income people of color. We need to ensure that officers are stopping a car if there are an imminent risk to public safety, not for minor code violations. We need to transform community police relations and reimagine public safety. We need to stop targeting Black and brown low-income neighborhoods. And we need to stop. We need to start treating Black people like people, not property. So I'm excited to be a co-sponsor on this bill, and I look forward to the passing of this legislation and many more pieces of legislation to support Black people and brown people here in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks, for your co-sponsorship, your support, and your unapologetic advocacy for poor people and people of color here in the city of Philadelphia. Another co-sponsor to the bill and another one of my colleagues in City Council, Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
I'd like to thank my colleague, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, for offering this legislation. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of this legislation to address the issue of driving while Black in the city of Philadelphia. As a Black woman, as a mother of a Black boy, and the wife to a Black man, this is an important issue to me. And I want to quickly tell a story that I thought about when my colleague first told me about this legislation. So my husband works downtown in Midtown, and he drives, and used to drive, a Black Chevy Impala in Philadelphia. But one morning he called me when he was on the way to work. He had finally reached his over, and he said, "Babe, I'm calling you because I've just been stopped by the police." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "I don't know. I guess because I'm Black." I said, "Stay on the phone with me." And my husband proceeded to talk to the police officers and let them know that he was on his way to work. And they said, "Well, where are you going?" He said, "I'm on my way to work." And they said, "Well, where do you work?" Why is it unbelievable that a Black man driving a Black Chevy Impala with tinted windows, who's a college graduate and a trained accountant, is on his way to work? And those are the issues that we are continuing to deal with in the city of Philadelphia. And I want to take a moment to pause and again send my deepest condolences to the family of Walter Wallace Jr. One of the toughest moments in this work so far this year has been giving condolences to his mother, who was inconsolable. So we're in a moment and a reckoning in our city and our community, where the community is no longer okay with the brutality and the violence against us. And it is time for us not only to reform policing and reimagine policing, but it is time for us to shift the entire table to undo years of systematic inequities and racial inequality and racism in these systems that we've been dealing with for so long. The time is now, and I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, for introducing this legislation so that we can address one of the most important issues around police reform in this time. So I look forward to the important work we're going to do to ensure the passage of this legislation and to ensure that we see change on the street. Thank you so much.
Every once in a while, as legislators, we come across an issue that becomes personal to us. And the story that Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson just told about her husband is the narrative that so many young black men have growing up in the city of Philadelphia. We become immune to what it means to get pulled over. We begin to think it's a part of our normal culture and our normal life. I shared an op-ed yesterday morning, that talked about some of my personal experiences as it relates to being pulled over by police. So you can tell this issue is personal for me. I know what it means to go shop for a car and say, I'm going to go buy a car that gets me pulled over less. As soon as Councilmember Gilmore Richardson said he was driving an Impala, I knew how that story was going to end. Because we got a list of cars that we know. If you own that particular type of car, you're more likely to get pulled over. And it may shift from generation to generation. I'm not as young as I used to be. So I don't know what their car is as of today. But I bet you if you talk to young people in the city of Philadelphia, they'll have their version of the Impala. For us, it was the Bonneville growing up. And so with that being said, I'm going to introduce somebody else who I know this issue is 100% personal to, because he too, born and raised in the city of Philadelphia, and recognized that we need to change how our communities are policed. He is a leader in the labor movement, but more important, a leader in the black community here in the city of Philadelphia, President Chris Woods of 1199 City.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Chris Woods, and I'm the president of the National Union of Hospital and Healthcare Employees, District 1199C. Thank you to Councilmember Isaiah Thomas for sponsoring this legislation and inviting District 1199C to participate in today's event. District 1199C is one of the largest unions in the city of Philadelphia, representing over 13,000 men and women across the city of Philadelphia that's concentrated in hospitals and healthcare facilities. I'm also proud to say that District 1199C is one of the most diverse unions in the city of Philadelphia. Ultimately, the labor movement is about fighting for dignity and justice for all workers. You should have the right to fair wages on the job, and you should have the right to not be racially profiled on your way to work. This is why District 1199 supports this legislation. And for us, as black young men in the city of Philadelphia, a traffic stop between us and the police could be life and death. So I want to make sure I definitely say that here today, and I want to say that again, that as a young black male in the city of Philadelphia, a traffic stop with the police could be life and death for us. This bill will definitely help in making sure that police have an opportunity to address real issues in the city of Philadelphia. And I'm so proud of Isaiah to introduce this. As Kara mentioned, this really takes courage and real leadership. And so I'm proud to stand here with Isaiah and really push for people to do the right thing tomorrow and vote this bill into law. And last but certainly not least, I just want to send our condolences on behalf of District 1199C to the Wallace family. What we witnessed earlier this week was definitely a tragedy, and it raises a lot of questions as we look to move forward and have an opportunity to address the issues between police and our community. So I look forward to being a part of that. I think this bill starts to address those kind of things. And again, I'm excited to stand with Councilmember Isaiah Thomas and all of his colleagues today. So thank you again for inviting me to be here.
So before I open it up for question and answer, I want to take a moment to pass the mic to somebody who is crucial, somebody who is important as it relates to the work of changing how communities are policed in the city of Philadelphia. I know I get to stand here and wear the suit and the council pin, wherever it is, and go run up to my office and take a lot of credit for some of the work that's being done. But I'm not naive. I'm an elected official who represents the people. This isn't about me. My job is to introduce, vote for, pass laws, and allocate resources that's reflective of what the people of Philadelphia want. And if I stood here today and told you that these were my ideas, and it was me, and I'm the only one that's doing this, I'd be lying to you. To be honest with you, when I first got sworn in January, and I wanted to hit the ground running as it related to education and a couple other things, I knew that if I wanted to have a serious conversation, a serious legislation around changing policing in the city of Philadelphia, I knew I had to go talk to Reverend Mark Thomas. You cannot begin to have a serious conversation in this city without talking to the people who are impacted by this issue, the people who are passionate about this issue, and the people who are critical thinkers that want to put us in a position to address this issue so we don't have to revisit this again. My son is 8. By the time my son is my age, hopefully he won't be a city councilor, but hopefully whatever work he's doing, he doesn't go back and have to revisit the problems of his father. We are committed to addressing the policing issue in the city of Philadelphia, and we will not stop until it's done. And one of the people who are one of the leaders of that movement, somebody who I look up to, is somebody who's also been very instrumental in civilian oversight and what that will look like. I call Reverend Tyler. I say, Mark, what should we do with civilian oversight? Reverend Mark Tyler.
First of all, thank Councilman Isaiah Thomas. People say a lot of things when they're running for office, but when they get in, that's another thing. So I want to thank him for his determination in bringing immediate reform and the co-sponsors of this bill as well. I'm glad to see Councilmember Brooks and Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, both of whom, like Councilmember Thomas, are all doing an amazing job around the issue of police accountability. Also want to thank Chief Public Defender Kiera Bradford Gray, who has been a great partner for Power and Live Free. And so as Councilman said, I'm here, but I'm really representing a huge team of persons from Power and Live Free, an amazing group of clergy and lay people, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, ethical society, and others who work together on these issues tirelessly. So before I say what I want to say, I was given a talking point from the Chief Public Defender who reminded me that in 1 year's time, these stops amount to about 8.5 years worth of work. Is that right? So, and they don't yield much. That's the key. And they also open us up to deadly encounters, which is even more important. Monday night, while I was testifying for the Public Safety Committee on Oversight, my 16-year-old daughter walked in the house to tell me, Dad, there was just a shooting in West Philadelphia. It's on Instagram. A black man was shot and killed by the police. I looked for it on the news, it wasn't on the news, but it was sure enough on Instagram. And I shared that with the Public Safety Committee and excused myself and went to West Philadelphia. And though my church is in Society Hill, our members live all over West Philadelphia. And that night, clergy were there, these council members, a number of them were there, and the mother of Walter Wallace came outside for a word of prayer with clergy. And we prayed with her, with their husband, and with their family. And as we prayed with them, I was thinking about Tanya Brown Dickerson, who we've also prayed with and walked with, whose son was killed by Philadelphia police officers in December of 2014. And I went back, I keep all these files in my folder. And Councilmember Thomas, listen to this, because if your legislation was passed in 2014, it's possible that Brandon Tate Brown would be alive today. Brandon Tate Brown was driving a rent-a-car from an agency he worked for. Why was he stopped at 2:40 in the morning? Because he was driving with running lights on. How do I know? This is the investigation of Officer Corelli. And it asks, could you detail the circumstances that led you and your partner, Dang, initiating a vehicle investigation? Answer, my partner and I observed this vehicle being operated without headlights. Tail lights off, he had his running lights on. A few minutes later, Brandon Tate Brown was dead. Now, most of the time when I see somebody with their headlights not on, I was trained in driving school to just flash my lights at them, or to turn my lights off and back on so they'd know. Why in the world would police officers stop somebody, search their vehicle, want to get them out of the car, and ultimately kill them because your headlights are not on? The police should be here to serve and protect and care for us. If they cared for Brandon, they would have simply wanted his headlights on so that he would not have had an accident or caused an accident with someone else. But we know all too well, by research and by anecdote, that for far too many officers, the reason for the stop is just a pretext. And that for many, Brandon and Walter and David Jones were never human in the first place and not deserving of help, but instead were meant to be put down. And so I want to thank you, Councilmember Thomas, for this law. We may not be able to change the hearts and minds of everybody in uniform, but we can certainly put policies and standards in place to protect the people in this city until the hearts and minds are changed. So thank you. Power Live Free absolutely supports this, and we pray that this will save lives in the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Reverend Tyler, and thank you to everybody that's a part of the team over at Power. We appreciate you. Before I go to closing remarks, I'll take a minute to open the floor up for any questions. I'm sure there are questions about the bill, so I'll take a minute to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Have you had any conversations with Commissioner Outlaw or the Fraternal Order of Police about this? And can you tell us what the feedback was that you got?
We have not had any conversations with the Fraternal Order of Police or Commissioner Outlaw at this point, but we do anticipate having conversation with the administration about the bill. And you know, we have 9 co-sponsors as of now, and so at some point we will have to have a conversation with the administration about this legislation and the implementation of this legislation. I do want to go on the record and say that we did reach out to folks for a conversation. We haven't gotten to the point where our schedules have been able to coincide, but I'm optimistic that we will be able to have a conversation about how we can look at a bill like this to improve community police relations. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, I just want to close out with this. Oh, sorry. I just want to close out with this. I started by saying names of black men who have fallen victim to this issue that we're discussing today. You heard Reverend Mark say those same names, but you also heard Reverend Mark talk about an issue that speaks to the core of people's heart. We can't change who people are. We can see, whether it's conscious or subconscious, there's something about young black men whereas though we're viewed and deemed as a threat. There's something about young black men when placed in the same position of some of our counterparts who are not young black men, the outcome turns out different. This is very emotional for us. I hear people say all the time, it must be difficult to be a black police officer in this situation. And I don't know, I'm not a black police officer. I can imagine maybe it is. But I know as a black elected official who want to see serious change as it relates to the education system for people of color, the poverty issue for people of color, and the issue of today, how our communities are policed. It is very, very difficult to stand here and talk about one single issue that might impact one facet of this huge problem that's plaguing communities of color. So our goal here today is just to take one small step that we hope will move towards improving trust to policing communities, that will move towards putting police in a position where they can be more efficient as it relates to their job. This isn't just about the young black man who gets stopped. This is about putting police in a position to focus on crime, focus on solving crime. We have a homicide issue in the city of Philadelphia, and I know everyone is going to talk about the different factors that relates to that homicide issue. The one thing we can't deny is that we have to improve our arrest rate when a homicide happens. And so we're spending all this money on policing, all this money on public safety, but yet, like Reverend Mark said, simple traffic stops often end up with people who look like me and Councilmember Gilmore Richardson's husband dead. And if we're going to put ourselves in a position where we're really going to be serious and be honest and try to address this issue, we're going to have to ask for radical change, and this legislation is radical change. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody for being a part of the press conference.